Today we learned that Connor Hawke, son of Green Arrow, is going to come out as asexual. Now, I guess this kind of falls in line with the character, but not exactly. When I think of asexual, I think of the group of people that's within the LGBTQIA. It goes on forever. But I think that A is supposed to stand for, say, asexual. And in that reference, or in that frame of mind, or in that definition, that means that you're like not sexually attracted to anyone, no matter the gender or what. You're just, there's no sexual attraction whatsoever. I always thought Connor Hawke was a monk. I don't think that's what monks are. I think monks are like, they take a vow of celibacy to be a part of an order or something like that. Normally has something to do with religion. Don't know that Connor Hawke is really like that, but he's certainly part of a monastery. He's a monk. And one of the things about the character, and one of his characteristics that I always thought was interesting, is that while he's very attractive and women are certainly attracted to him, he shows absolutely no interest in them. I don't think that was because he's asexual, though. I thought that was because he was a monk. But I guess DC Comics needs to lecture us a little bit more. And when you hear the details of what this story is going to be in DC Pride 2022, we got a big old pride off between DC and Marvel this year to see who can be the most inclusive and representative and celebrate Pride Month the most. When I read these details, I thought, these guys don't get Connor Hawke at all. And quite frankly, I don't think any of the creators associated with this have ever read the character, ever written the character, and I doubt they'll ever do anything with him again until maybe DC Pride 2023. But apparently they needed some A representation for Pride Month, and here are the details. Green Arrow's son, Connor Hawke, will come out as asexual in DC's upcoming DC Pride 2022. According to them, which is apparently a website, I did not know that, but there was a link to this article. One of the stories featured in the upcoming DC Pride 2022 anthology will see Hawke, son of Oliver Queen and successor to the Green Arrow mantle, come out as asexual in a story called Think of Me. Coming from Rose Stein, Ted Brandt, and Frank Chetkovic, Think of Me follows Hawke as he fights Music Meister, while he also writes a letter to his mother about coming out. Quote, I was very aware of the logistics of the letter, said Brandt, as well as coming out. It needs to explain what asexuality feels like because a lot of people can't imagine it. And that makes perfect sense to me, especially because I'm also autistic. I get not understanding what it's like for someone who experiences something different to you. I don't really care that Connor Hawke is asexual. I don't care what it's really like. I actually read the stories for superhero fare and action and stuff like that. I don't care that the writer is autistic either. I don't think that means anything anymore. It seems like everybody's autistic these days, but I've never got into a comic book and be like, you know what? I wonder what it feels like to be asexual. Man, it'd be really interesting if I could get the perspective of this character as he writes a letter to his mommy about what it's like to be asexual. And like I said, I don't think he is asexual. I think he's a monk. That is a vow of celibacy. That is completely different than not having any sexual attraction to any genders. A vow of celibacy is having attraction and denying yourself that to be a part of the order and to show your obedience. I'm pretty sure that's what the character has been about, at least until today. But this continues DC Comics' ongoing agenda. We've had the sexuality reveals of Alan Scott decades upon decades after his first appearance in DC Comics. We've also had a sexuality swap of Tim Drake, more decades upon decades. Jon Kent, a little less than a decade. And of course, all the new characters that DC create nowadays are LGBTQ plus representative for the most part. We got Joe Mullins for Green Lantern, Jackson Hyde, the new Flash character everyone forgot from Infinite Frontier, the 10 new characters that were canceled in Teen Titans Academy, most of which I don't think anyone actually knew that they were LGBTQ representative, but Tim Sheridan says so. He specifically made that comic book to get that in there. One thing that all those characters have in common is their afterthoughts, not in the minds of the readers, but to DC Comics themselves. Once they do the reveal and they get the headlines, which they're getting right now, they do the one story and then they forget about the characters. And that's what's going to happen to Connor Hawke. And I think that sucks because Connor Hawke is a really cool character. Really been enjoying him in this Robin series where he's been a pretty big part of it. Not necessarily a focal point, but certainly a big part of what they're doing in Robin. Why isn't Joshua Williamson writing this story? Why isn't anyone that's ever been involved with Connor Hawke in the history of the character doing any of this stuff? Because it's not important. It's literally just so they can say it was included in the Pride 2022 anthology book, which I don't think is a good reason to do a reveal like this and make a character an afterthought. And it's not on the fans, it's on the publisher, but it's part of this weird agenda that DC Comics are going through. Sales are tanking. All these characters that have come out recently and they've tried to put them in their own series. We've had Wonder Girl Yarrow Floor get canceled. We had Joe Mullins was a big part of Green Lantern. Essentially, she was the star in one of the stories while Jon Stewart was the star in another one. That one got canceled after 12 issues. Jon Kent's Superman book is failing as we speak. It feels like DC Comics are not only trying to sabotage these characters, but their entire publisher in the name, I guess, of being woke. Congratulations, DC. We do have some more information. While many Green Arrow fans have long interpreted Connor as asexual, Brandt says the creative team behind Think of Me wanted to make it official in DC continuity. Quote, "It was that extra little bit of help having the entire team be asexual," Brandt said. "It really felt like it was a personal story for all of us on some level." The upcoming story will also feature an appearance from Damian Wayne Robin, who will both assist Hawke in his fight with Music Meister and ground the coming out moment even further. That allowed us to make sure it becomes a permanent fixture of who the character is, Brandt said. Well, there you go. Now you know why these guys are writing the story. It has nothing to do with their interest in Connor Hawke. It has nothing to do with their interest in DC Comics or writing a good story. Hey, let's get a creative team. And the only thing of notoriety of all of them is that they're all asexual, and we'll let them create a character or change a character to be asexual. I don't think most people did interpret Connor Hawke as asexual, like I said. I think they interpreted him as a monk who had a vow of celibacy. Completely different than the asexual people that are going to be in the pride parades saying that they have no sexual attraction to anybody. Monks, Buddhist monks, monks in a monastery, they are not asexual beings. They are denying themselves the pleasure of the flesh as part of being their order. That was one of the parts of being Connor Hawke. That's one of the things that made him cool. That's one of the reasons I like the character, besides the fact that he's a complete badass. That's what I would like to see people actually accentuate or highlight about the character of Connor Hawke. What makes him so cool? He's also a complete badass. Even though that is really the second most defining characteristic of Connor Hawke is his fighting acumen, obviously behind being the son of Oliver Queen. And it's an afterthought because it doesn't serve the agenda that they're trying to put out there. It's so weird being a DC Comics fan right now. You're just like, what the hell are these guys doing? Hawke first appeared in 1994's Green Arrow #0 by Kelly Puckett and Jim Aparo. Hawke was largely absent from the main DC continuity from 2011 to 2021 after Queen was reintroduced as a younger character in the New 52 relaunch. Since the Infinite Frontier initiative, Hawke has since been reintroduced as the second Green Arrow. Connor Hawke plays a significant role in the ongoing Robin series from Joshua Williams. And with these headlines and this change to the character, he will largely be absent from DC Comics for a lot longer now. It's weird that they waste these characters for a moment, an opportunity to go out there and virtue signal and show everybody how inclusive they are, but they'll never write a series starring him. And if they do, it'll be 4 issues and they'll forget about the character for 30 years again, like they're doing with all the other characters. There's one character that's still got his main title, and that's Jon Kent, and that's failing at the moment. Not because he's come out as bisexual, it's because the stories by Tom Taylor are so awful, but I don't think the headlines and trying to appeal to an audience that particularly doesn't read comic books has helped that either. Perhaps DC Comics, instead of focusing on virtue signaling and showing everybody how inclusive they are, which they are, there are already characters that represent all these demographics within the DC Comics universe. It's just, I guess it's boring to highlight characters that already exist. It's so much more exciting because you can get a headline and you can get the publisher in the news if you change a character and you can say it's Superman this time. But it certainly feels like, as a DC fan, we are the biggest afterthought in all of comic books. The actual customers, the people that are willing to pay money for a comic book. It's getting depressing. That's really what it is. Hey, DC got their newest headline. Congratulations, DC Comics. Congratulations, DC Comics. You can now say that you have an asexual character when you do your Pride comic book. I do not pay for comic books and read them and cover them every day here on the channel to be lectured at by a comic book publisher. I come for the action. I come for the characters and the great stories, which we're not getting any of because DC Comics are so much more focused on virtue signaling and getting headlines that they forgot that they are a comic book publishing enterprise. The oldest one of the world, in my opinion, the most important one of the world, with the best shared comic book universe, all being thrown to the wayside so they can get a headline on a website called them that a vast majority of their readers didn't even know existed until today. Obviously, this has been an ongoing problem. I have called out DC Comics on their agenda. Some people say I'm crazy. Some people say, you're a conspiracy theorist, Wes. It's not even there. Well, I've been talking about it for a long time. I think the proof is in the pudding. Definitely check this video out where I said, hey, you know what? It's time to call a spade a spade. DC Comics have an agenda. It's more important than their customers. It's more important than satisfying the readers, the characters, and the history. It is what DC Comics is all about. Or should we call them AC Comics?